Sounds good. 3 o'clock. Okay. All ready to start? I wish I was. Look at this. I need to shake your camera. I've got to remount the camera. Hey, everybody, welcome to What Drives Us. My name is Russell Frost. I am your host. And this week, in a special one-on-one episode, my friend, famous author, star of screens of all sizes, and the stage, I guess, because he's been on a few panels in his time. Mr. Edward Neidermeyer, you would recognize him from his best-selling book. Oh, probably can't say that, can I? Is that like Super Bowl where it's traded?
I don't know what the rules around that are, but I think just fine selling is works for me.
From his very popular book, Ludicrous, The Unvarnished History of Tesla Motors. He is the communications director for Partners for Automated Vehicle Education. He runs one of my favorite podcasts. Well, I shouldn't say that. He shares running that podcast with two other fine folks called the Autonocast. And, is that it? You guys have apparel now?
Well, it's not available to the general public at this point, but we're very much a hobby show.
Well, I understand that. What Drives Us still very much like Apple TV, a hobby endeavor. Not really serious, but nonetheless in millions of homes.
The important thing is that you have fun doing it.
Absolutely. So, I think I ended the last time we had a chat with this, and a huge plug. If you aren't listening to the Autonocast, listen to the Autonocast. You'll notice that we do talk about autonomy on What Drives Us, but honestly, I kind of avoid it because there are other people that know way more about me and do a much better job. And specifically, let me repeat myself, it's the Autonocast. Kirsten Korosek and Alex Roy and Edward do a fantastic job. They bring in staggeringly cool guests. The last few shows have been absolutely wonderful. So that's all. That's all I'm doing. For the rest of the time, I'm treating you like crap.
Well, I appreciate you at least warming me up. I would say too. Our next guest, and I'm not sure when this will come out and when our next episode will come out, but our next guest is extra exciting. One of the more exciting guests we've had in a while.
You just had the CEO or CIO of Qualcomm?
The senior VP for automotive. Yeah.
Thank you. Senior VP for automotive.
Yeah.
So not exactly a bit player.
No, we're very lucky. People want to be on our show, which is a nice place to be. But like I said, I don't get too teasy about this, but the next one was a bit of a surprise. I would not have guessed that this person not only was a listener of the show, but then wanted to be on. So really excited about that. And like I said, hopefully by the time you're hearing this, it'll be out and you can go check it out at autonocast.com.
There you go. Autonocast.com. Okay. So the first thing, seriously, the Tesla robot. How do we even how do we communicate as adults in this world?
Yeah. It's funny because, I for work, and by the way, I should preface this by saying, all my views that you're hearing here today are just my personal views alone. My day job at PAVE is a coalition of now more than 80 members, 80 organizations are members. So institutionally, it's very hard for PAVE to kind of speak with one voice. We are able to put out statements at times, but that's hard to do. And please don't mistake my personal views that you're hearing here today for anything like an official PAVE view. But this question, this whole thing with this Tesla robot, I've been for PAVE, I've been really working on sort of how can we build a curriculum that will help people have a mental model for autonomous technology, autonomous vehicle technology specifically, that where you don't have to know all the ins and outs, but you know enough about it and you have a general sort of idea of how it works that you can sort of reason about what makes sense and what doesn't, and at least get some traction in that. And it's a very hard problem because it's very complex technology, and it can be hard to abstract, and there's just a lot of ins and outs, and I've kind of been peeling the layers off the onion over and over again. And I think I'm like, oh, this is a really simple way of thinking about it, and no, you can always try and make it simpler. All that is to say, I've kind of realized that sort of one of the ways that people, misunderstand autonomous vehicle technology is that they start by thinking of it as a car. Like they start to, the foundation for the mental model is a car. And, because we all kind of know generally what a car is, it's well-defined, really culturally defined in a lot of ways, things. But fundamentally, a car is a utility mobility device. At least in this country, we kind of use it whether we're going a mile or 1,000 miles, anywhere, everywhere, all conditions, for better or for worse, right? That's how we think of them. And that would be essentially, the way we use cars for the most part are, sort of what you would call level 5 autonomy, which is a very difficult problem. And the kind of the better way to think about autonomous drive technology, and this hasn't necessarily always been obvious, but if you start by building your mental model with robots, then you kind of start to think about the technology in a different way. And it really is much more like robots than it is like cars. Now, some of us, when we think robots, we might think of, the humanoid thing that we saw dancing on stage. That's a sci-fi trope, though. I mean, there are humanoid robots that exist in the world, but they're generally not super effective. And that's because, ultimately, like the essence of robots is that the simpler the task that you're automating, and the more repetitive, right? So like in a car body shop or whatever, like the body assembly has been automated for a very long time, because it's just, the pieces come together, you drive the bolt, or you weld it or whatever it is, right, in the same place over and over. It's repetitive. It's a simple motion. Right. And the robot then is designed for that task. So it's just an arm with a welder on it, because all you need to do is get out of the way and go back in and weld it, and get back out of the way. So when you're thinking about AVs, it's similar in that, people may be frustrated that like they can't go out and buy, a self-driving car that they can get in. It will drive them everywhere and anywhere. But, that doesn't mean AVs don't exist. And in fact, we've had autonomous dump trucks, at mines, at open pit mines for over, I think, like a decade now. And it's because that is a simple, repetitive task, and it's relatively easier to automate. And so, both when you're thinking of AVs and of robots, you can sort of assess, even a lay person without a real sophisticated understanding of the technology can assess the relative like reasonableness of different automation projects, whether it's, again, a robot or an automated vehicle, simply by asking yourself, how simple is this task? And, how much sort of unexpected complexities are likely to come up in the course of that task. And the simpler that task is, the more repetitive it is, and the less sort of interference there are from sort of the randomness of the world.
Right. The less judgment involved.
Yeah. So when someone comes out, and first of all, when someone says, I'm going to sell you level 5 autonomous drive technology, that's, and we can get into a little bit like why that's so hard, but that's a red flag, right? But then going beyond that and saying, we're going to build a humanoid robot, so that it can kind of do whatever you want. Like, this is
using the same technology as the car.
This is fantasy. Like, it's not serious. Like, it just isn't. I mean, I won't say that it absolutely could never, ever possibly be done, but like, it's not a serious goal, especially for a company that's never built a robot before.
it's so ridiculous on so many levels that I don't want to give it the credit of refuting it point by point. You know what I mean? Like, which isn't to say that you can't destroy that whole thing, but I mean, like, a generalized humanoid robot is a ridiculous first step, just like FSD is a ridiculous first step.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I would really, if you are interested in this topic, whether it's autonomous vehicles or robotics more generally, but you don't really come from a super technical background. There's a book by Laura Major, who's the chief technology officer at Motional, which is an autonomous vehicle company. And she wrote a book called What to Expect When You're Expecting Robots. And I've really kind of fallen in love with that book because it really takes a lot of the issues around this stuff and explains it in really like easy to understand, but not like insultingly like kid level. It's sophisticated stuff. And I think the thing that struck me reading it was, unless you actually work with robotics, you're almost always, and I think this is the case with AVs a lot as well, when you think about them as a non-expert or whatever, you're almost always like, your mental model for them is almost always infected by sci-fi of some kind, and not with the practical realities, because the practical realities of just interacting with a robot in a way that is genuinely useful is super, super, super hard. And it's no coincidence that basically, there have been really for consumers, like there aren't that many robotic devices that have been made that are useful. And it's basically like the Roomba and the lawnmowers. And like, I guess some people consider a dishwasher a robot, which is fair. It's, I can see that, but even that, you have to load it. Right. And so all robot, and I think that one of the big takeaways from that book for me is that all robots, to be useful, they need to be able to interact with humans. And that's actually often the hardest part, because humans are walking, talking edge cases. We're hard to predict. We have emotion, like we have, our needs are complex and variable. And like, if our needs were as simple as drive this bolt, like in this precise, part of this piece of metal over and over and over again, then yeah, like make a robot to solve your problems. The reality is that very few of our problems are that simple and predictable. And that's kind of the heart of the problem.
Or there would be more robots.
Exactly.
I mean, okay. To me, it's just a stock pump. It was just to like, look at one more thing. Here's something to talk about. And look at the punters. They just ate it up. They ate it up.
Yeah.
The robot is going to be the difference. Tesla's going to go to whatever it is per share. And everything's going to be amazing. And they're going to change the world. And it's like, they didn't even have like, they had a person in a suit, in a bad suit. And if you look at, sorry, I'm going down this road.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, I think I see it as an opportunity to try and educate people about some of this stuff. The problem is that the entire, like, it's, by the time you get to this point where you have, your girlfriend in a robot costume dancing on stage to like hype up your next big product class, like you've already fostered a culture around you that, can't question things and that can't look for sort of independently sourced, credible knowledge.
Right.
And so unfortunately, and to me, the big tragedy of Elon Musk is that, he gets people interested in really important things, but he doesn't get them interested in a way that makes them want to really understand them. He makes them interested in a way like these really fascinating and super, super important topics are all just kind of ways to be a fan of him. And it's like, that's to me is the problem, is it's like, no. Like these issues are way more important than any one person.
Absolutely.
And we really should, it is incumbent on all of us who do care about what the future looks like, to actually make the effort to try and understand this stuff so that we can even know like what to advocate for and what to just say that we want to see out of these technologies.
The one-to-one-ness of holding up the Dojo, quote unquote, CPU or whatever it was, and Musk holding up the solar shingle. I mean, shameless. It's just shameless. And I'm not enough of a computer hardware expert. I've talked to a few and they snicker. It's like the robot. What they're proposing is kind of cray-cray. But it's coming from Elon and he's going to save the world.
Well, and I mean, 5 years ago, the guy said that, self-driving was a solved problem. And here we are 5 years later. And like, I'm sorry, the full self-driving beta as it exists right now is not even remotely close to being something that you could think about trusting your life to. And so to me, the big question about all of this is just, what is the point at which people finally say, like, I can only take so much on faith. And it's fascinating how, this is a time when, people are kind of generally less religious and can't believe in sort of some of the things that people used to almost universally believe in about the nature of the universe and stuff. And that people took on faith. And it's almost as if like moving away from that, that we still have some deep need to have faith in something. Oh. And like, it almost doesn't matter what it is, as long as there's one thing that we can feel like we can just trust absolutely. And like, I get that. I just don't know. I don't know that people are better off like putting that faith in Elon Musk than, the flying spaghetti monster or whatever.
It's an abdication of personal responsibility. It's saying this person knows everything and I'm going to support them no matter what. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to deal with it. I trust them. And it's awful. It's just,
I see why it's easier. Like not having to think for yourself is definitely easier.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's talk. Should we talk about something happy?
Sure. Yeah.
Rivian yesterday coughed up their first production truck. Now, I don't know how many trucks are spitting out of the plant. I'm hoping lots. I hope that this isn't one and now they're going to kind of fall back and 6 months later they'll have to work on more. I don't know. Maybe you have some insight, but great news for everybody. Yeah. Even if it is $150,000 truck.
The first ones definitely are expensive. And crazy, and that's a reality of auto manufacturing is, the cars literally, because of the economies of scale, they get cheaper as you make more and more and more. And sure. the very first one that you make costs billions of dollars at that point, Right. I mean, look, I am a fan of Rivian's. I think that they, I think that they're an example of, so what I wrote in the book, like, of course, a lot of people, especially people who have not read my book, want to believe that I wrote this book just to like kick as much dirt at Tesla as I can. You didn't. But if you read it, you find that I actually have a reason for looking at Tesla the way that I do. And that is that they brought this high-tech culture into autos for the first time. And so they were an opportunity to learn sort of like, what are the strengths of that, of doing that? And then what are the downsides, what are the things that it's not so good at? And, I think what I say sort of in the conclusion of the book is that, I really, the Tesla story, again, it's not that they're all bad. It's that there's some very real good and some very real bad. And that the future of cars and mobility and stuff is really going to come down to the companies. It belongs to the companies who are able to kind of take some of the strengths of both of those approaches and find a way to make them work together, which is not easy. And I think that Rivian, is one of the companies that, just in my own conversations with them, really seem to take that approach. And so I'm generally like enthusiastic about that. I think that their choice of products is very pragmatic. And the design looks great, and the technology looks great. Like it looks great. We'll see. I think the scary thing is that, Tesla's survival came down in a number of instances to, their ability to, kind of do whatever it takes, and specifically Elon Musk's ability to kind of do whatever it takes when his back is against the wall. And so I think people have overestimated maybe, how easy it is to start up an EV company based on Tesla. But I think, luckily, because people overestimate the easiness, how easy it's going to be, there's capital available to companies like Rivian. And in fact, I just saw that their IPO, apparently they're looking for to raise, not valuation, raise between $5 and $8 billion from their IPO. And actually, I think that's smart, because I think one of the lessons from Tesla too is that you don't want to be constantly having to raise money. It's better to just get that big chunk and force yourself to be disciplined with it, because at the end of the day, operational efficiency in the auto industry is habit and practice. And if you don't force yourself to say, if you just kind of, whenever you start to run low on money, you're just like, screw it, we'll just go raise more. Like, you'll never develop that operational discipline. I think that's one of the real challenges that Tesla faces.
Understatement. I think the Amazon tie-in, I mean, and tell me if I'm being silly, but I think the Amazon is the real trump card for Rivian in a sense. They're investors and their customers. And that's a huge customer to have. If Amazon is serious, and if Amazon will actually buy and use these vehicles, that could certainly help Rivian over a lot of early start challenges, help them through that, right?
100%. No,
okay.
I think you're absolutely right. And I do think that Amazon is serious about, moving to, I mean, they're making massive investments, not just in Rivian, a bunch of different companies. And they're really, I mean, they're growing, right? But they're also trying to replace their fleet with, they have some really ambitious goals in terms of going to zero emission fleet. And I think Rivian's going to be critical to that. And yeah, I mean, having, one of your biggest investors be this, customer who will pretty much just take as many of these vans probably as you can make, unless there's some huge problem with them for some reason. Like I think Amazon can and will take a lot of those, and that's all volume that helps soak up those fixed costs that are so hard in the car business.
Absolutely, and it's great exposure and everything else. I mean, yeah,
it's a rolling advertisement.
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be any branding deal or whatever, but still, everybody will know, right? Here's that weird new Amazon van. Oh, that's an they're probably not going to be. How long before the Tesla stand say it's a Tesla vehicle? I was reaching too far. I'm sorry. Speaking of reaching too far, the GM Bolt recall today. Did you see the news that they issued some sort of technical service bulletin or some kind of warning not to park your Bolt within 50 feet of another vehicle?
Yeah, it's been I haven't really been following this story super closely.
I haven't either. So don't feel bad, dude. I'm not, I won't hit you, but it's like smacking yourself in the head with a hammer. Like, how does this happen?
Well, yeah.
They got through the Volt. Now, granted, the Bolt is a next step, right? There's more batteries, there's more things in there, but wow.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure the problem traces back to LG Chem, right? The battery supplier.
I believe so. Yes.
But yeah, because the Hyundai Kona EV, I think, had the same batteries, and it had a recall, I think, for fires. And then I think there were even some LG Chem cells that were used in like stationary storage in Korea that caught fire, like at stationary sites and stuff. So it's something that's happening on the supplier level, which means, it's not great for GM, right? Obviously this is not ideal. It's never good. But it's not like, this is a sign that GM can't make electric cars or something like that. It's a supplier issue, and it's still an issue, but.
So if I can reinterpret what you just said. So like the Takata airbag recall, where no one gave a rat's ass about what airbag their car had, how many, if it was Takata or not. People will happily get into electric vehicles, even though this is sort of a black eye.
I mean, kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, there's only so many battery suppliers,
Sure.
you know, and at the end of the day, especially, so yeah, it sounds like they're manufacturing defects too, which are also particularly, you know, challenging, right? It's one thing if you as an OEM sign off on a design defect, right? Like because the supplier's engineering work, basically you have to sign off it in the parts approval process or whatever. And so a design defect is, you know, or a design problem is a bigger deal, or it's more of the responsibility. I mean, there's still, you know, QA and stuff. But I would say, generally speaking, this seems like more of a black eye for LG Chem, which kind of previously had been one of the, you know, has been one of the big players in batteries. So.
And here's where I reluctantly trot out the standard sort of boilerplate technology disclaimer, which is this happens with all kinds. Gas cars are still exploding every day on highways all over America. This doesn't mean that all EVs are safe, but of course, because it's a nascent category, these things have a bigger impact than they probably should.
Yeah. And
yeah.
No, and absolutely. And like, I know a lot of other like Tesla critics have been really, you know, jumped on every single time a Tesla's on fire, you know, and I've really, and not that I get any credit for this from the fans at all, but right. I really have like been pretty principled about like, I don't want to be scaremongering about battery EV fires for precisely the reason that you're saying. Densely packed energy is just dangerous. There's no way for it to not be dangerous. And you know, maybe that's gas fair. and battery fire, like there are some differences, and we could talk about that. And you know, certainly I think, you know, if there are, I think it's given the nature of battery fires, you know, sort of making design decisions like, you know, making it kind of potentially hard to get out of the back seat of a vehicle that may have crashed because there's not, you know, a mechanical door release on, you know, that's easily accessible to everyone, like stuff like
a secret. Yeah.
I think those are like design decisions that you can question, but like, you know, battery fires have happened. They're going to happen. They'll never go away completely. Just like after 100 years of gasoline cars, it's not like we have zero gasoline fires, you know, gas car fires. So, you know, cars are dangerous. Energy is dangerous.
Vehicles are dangerous. Robots are especially. Elon's robot. Why would they? I'm gonna regress for just a second. But what was the big deal with like making the robot timid and weak and slow so that it wouldn't hurt people? Like, is that some sort of like Tesla joke or something? And I missed it. I just don't get, like, why waste time talking about that and giggling about it on stage?
Yeah. Well, it's clearly like Elon clearly has certain things that he just like. He thinks they're part of his brand or something. And so he just kind of hits on it over and over again. And one of those things is like, AI is scary and it's going to, you know, take over and make us house pets at best. And, you know, whatever, enslave us at worst. And like, I think that's what that's about. And he even said like his sort of justification for doing this, like, yeah, like maybe there are some, you know, we can use the chip or whatever, which is like, frankly, not, you know, the synergies there don't seem particularly compelling. But it was sort of like a you know, well, someone's going to make this. And like, if we make it, then, you know, we won't, like the AI that we create for this somehow won't take over the world or whatever.
It won't be evil because we did it.
Yeah. Look, Elon, he just, you know, people just have read too much sci-fi. Like people are just too into sci-fi. People want sci-fi to be real, and Elon makes people feel like sci-fi is real. And some of what he does to make people feel sci-fi is real accomplishments that are cool and admirable and good. And others are just like totally bizarre and like cringy, like super cringy. And like, and I think that's to me where I would, even if I were like really inclined to be a Musk fan, which obviously I'm not,
No.
but if I were, like, I think the point at which, you start to realize like this, like listening to this guy and repeating the things that he says isn't actually making me smarter. It's kind of making, and frankly, like, being like, oh, next update, we're going to be, I just know there's going to be massive progress on full self-driving, and like doing that for 5 years,
Blow
like,
your mind.
I would at some point just be like, but wait, like 5 years ago, he said that this was done. Like, clearly there's something going on here, and I would want to understand what was going on. And I guess the reason this is also going is that a lot of people just don't want to do that work, I guess.
I don't understand any of it. People like being in cults.
Yeah. People. Yeah. I mean, there's all this talk about like the metaverse and everything. And like Elon has already created sort of a cinematic universe for his fans to, the Elon cinematic universe.
It has fake currency. It has all sorts of performative actions.
Yeah. It's
roadsters in space and going to Mars.
Imminent threat of AI takeover. I mean, yeah. And yeah.
The whole Neuralink thing. He's going to cure every horrible, horrible ailment. And that's just vicious. Let's spend the last couple minutes we have together, Edward. Something I'm going to put all the pressure on you now. Are you ready?
Sure.
Pick something. What's good? What's new and exciting in your world? What are you excited about? What do you hate? No, that's me.
I'll tell you, I'm excited by NHTSA's engagement on level 2 driving automation. And
are you really?
And all that. I actually am. Not everyone loves cynical. It. Like, listen, I think that what's been done. I understand why like regulators have taken so long to move. At least I think I understand some of the reasons that they've taken so long to move. But the reality is that like, selling safety equipment that induces people to be less safe and selling it in a way that induces people to be less safe is just not something that you can justify. And I think particularly when you try to justify it using really misleading, data points and comparisons and things like that, it just, something needed to happen. And frankly, raising the stakes by releasing something called full self-driving, which is not, by their own admission, to, it's one thing to have it in a handful of people, who supposedly have been handpicked, but like releasing that more broadly, the scale is what's going to cause bad things. And even if they do make progress, that's going to lead to more bad things, because there'll be right now, the saving grace of full self-driving is that it's so bad that no one would even consider trusting it. You know what I mean? Like treating it like an actual self-driving car. And so can I tell you something that might give you some chills?
Sure. So, I spend 40 hours a week driving on the roads of North San Diego County, highways, surface streets. I'm there 40 hours. I'm in a car driving around. I want to tell you that almost every day I see someone in a Tesla.
Yeah. Yep.
Almost every day.
So autopilot, right. And so autopilot in the operational design domain that it was designed for, freeways, the performance is good enough that people do trust it. And the scary part is sort of when you get to the point where it's better than it is now and people start to get complacent, but it's still, you're still getting a lot of problems. And some of the problems that you see with full self-driving are just bizarre, just trying to understand what on earth could be going on inside that system to make it do some of the things that it does. Very hard to understand. So, the reality is that, the only justification that kind of people have for for this is that, it's all predicated on the assumption that, the problem will get solved and that, this technology will go on to save so many lives. I just don't think there's any credibility to that argument. And instead what you have is, I get that people think it's cool. I get that people want to be involved in, sort of beta testing this cutting edge technology, and people love the idea that the car is going to drive it. But like, it's just the NHTSA's enforcement guidances and stuff make it super, super clear that like this system should be, autopilot should be considered defective. And I think full self-driving is more of like an FTC thing, or I don't know who prosecutes scams. FTC. But the point is that not only do we have the NHTSA is like the letters that they're sending out are, it's hard for people, I think, to appreciate this, but the sophistication with which they're just talking about the issues in those letters is a like quantum leap from where they were before. And like that makes me feel good, because, I don't know that they're going to make the right decision about all this. Realistically, probably they'll do some things right and some things not right. And honestly, I don't know. And I don't know how long it'll take. And there's just a huge number of questions, but I think just the fact that like, they seem to they seem to be able to just talk about the problem and ask for data that's relevant to really understanding the problem is really heartening. And frankly, the data that they've requested, it's going to allow us to do what, to see the truth behind the really misleading statistics that Elon puts out there, because we'll get like more apples to apples data on where these systems are being used, how many miles are being used, how many, crashes are happening, how many deaths are happening. And so we're going to actually have like real data. And I think that's good, because, if the whole justification for this whole thing is like, oh, it's just automatically safer, because of this really misleading data comparison, like that's right. Not good. So it's as I get older, I've learned to temper my expectations and to be satisfied with like small but meaningful steps towards a slightly better world. And like, we may have a long way to go. We may have been sliding backwards for a while. We may be, the last few years, like making net steps backwards in auto safety. And in the statistics, we kind of are. But I think the fact that, this is clearly being taken seriously it's the first step. The first step is admitting you have a problem, right? I think that NHTSA is admitting that we have a problem. They're listening to NTSB, who's been saying that we have a problem, and they're speaking the language of understanding and solving that problem. And it's somewhere to start.
Thank you, Ed.
My pleasure. Always fun to chat with you.
Anything you want to plug before we shuffle off?
Nah, follow me on Twitter, Tweetermeyer on Twitter. The Autonocast is Ed's and Kristen's and Alex's very excellent podcast on autonomous vehicles, not just cars. Although I'm not waiting for a thing. That's all I got. Thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week. And until then, drive safe.